A judge is standing in the shop asking for you, Ethan. 16-year-old Ethan Brooks stopped, turning the wrench in his hand. The rear wheel of a blue commuter bicycle spun once beneath the repair stand, clicking softly as it slowed. Monday morning sunlight poured through the front windows of Brooks Cycle and Repair in Richmond, Virginia, catching silver tools, polished rims, and tiny specks of dust in the air. Ethan looked toward his uncle Marcus, certain he had misheard him. A judge. Marcus stood near the counter with his coffee untouched. That is what she said. Why would a judge want me? I was hoping you could tell me. Ethan lowered the wrench. 3 days earlier, he had been an ordinary high school student finishing a Friday afternoon at his uncle's bicycle shop. Now a woman in a charcoal gray suit stood near the entrance, studying the Brooks Cycle and Repair logo painted across the wall. She looked to be in her late 50s, composed and professional, with a leather folder tucked beneath one arm. When Ethan stepped out from behind the repair stand, she turned toward him. Ethan Brooks. Yes, ma'am. My name is Rebecca Bennett. I am a judge here in Richmond. Ethan glanced at Marcus, then back at her. Am I in trouble? Marcus moved closer. That is exactly what I would like to know. Rebecca's expression softened slightly. No one is here to accuse Ethan of anything. That should have relieved him. It did not. Ethan wiped his hands on a clean shop towel, suddenly aware of the faint bicycle grease beneath his fingernails. Then why are you looking for me? Rebecca studied him for a moment. Because of what happened Friday afternoon. The wrench in Ethan's other hand became perfectly still. Friday. He remembered the power wheelchair beside the sidewalk. The older man who could not get the front wheel to track straight. The little toolkit Ethan carried in his backpack. He also remembered a storefront window across the street and the uncomfortable questions that came afterward. How do you know about Friday? Ethan asked. Rebecca did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked at the embroidered logo on his clean navy work shirt. Brooks Cycle and Repair, she said. That logo is why I found you. Marcus set his coffee on the counter. Found him for what? Rebecca opened the leather folder, but did not remove anything. Before I explain, I need to make sure I have the right young man. Were you near West Broad Street on Friday afternoon? Yes. Were you carrying a small repair kit? Ethan nodded. And did you stop to help an older gentleman using a power wheelchair? Ethan felt his shoulders loosen slightly. His front caster was out of alignment. Rebecca's eyes changed at the technical answer, almost as if it confirmed something. You remember him? Of course. Did he tell you his name? Ethan thought back. Walter. I think he said Walter Bennett. The shop seemed to become quieter. Marcus looked at Rebecca. Ethan noticed the shared last name 1 second later. Bennett, he said. Rebecca nodded. Walter is my older brother. Ethan stared at her. Your brother? Yes. Is he okay? The question came so quickly that Rebecca paused. He is fine. Ethan exhaled. Good. Marcus watched his nephew, then turned to Rebecca. So your brother told you Ethan fixed his wheelchair? He told me much more than that. Ethan's relief disappeared again. Outside, a city bus rolled along the Richmond street, its engine briefly filling the silence before fading away. Rebecca closed the folder. Walter told me you refused his money. He told me you helped him reach the bus stop. And he told me what happened when someone decided those tools in your hands meant something very different. Ethan looked down at the wrench he was still holding. Marcus's voice became quieter. Ethan, what happened Friday? Ethan placed the wrench carefully on the workbench. It started because an old man was going to miss his bus. 3 days earlier, Ethan had been the one worried about getting home on time. Then he saw a wheelchair that could not move straight, and everything changed. Friday afternoon had begun like almost every other school day Ethan spent at Brooks Cycle and Repair. By 4:30, the last customer had collected a repaired mountain bike, and Ethan was wiping down the workbench while Marcus entered receipts behind the counter. The small Richmond shop smelled faintly of rubber, chain lubricant, and coffee that had been sitting too long. You planning to live here tonight? Marcus asked without looking up. Ethan glanced at the wall clock. I am leaving. Your bus does not wait for people who reorganize wrenches for fun. They were out of order. Marcus looked at the perfectly arranged tools. Tragic. Ethan smiled, pulled on his clean navy work shirt over a gray tee, and slipped his backpack over one shoulder. Inside was a compact repair kit Marcus had given him the previous summer. See you tomorrow. Homework first. I know. You always say that like I invented homework. Ethan stepped outside before Marcus could continue. The late afternoon air was cool, and traffic moved steadily along West Broad Street. Ethan usually caught the bus that brought him closer to home, giving him enough time to eat before starting homework. He was checking the arrival time on his phone when he noticed an older man near the edge of a commercial plaza. The man sat in a dark power wheelchair angled awkwardly toward the sidewalk. He moved the control stick forward. The chair rolled several inches, but the front left caster pulled sideways. He stopped immediately. Ethan slowed. Several pedestrians passed without realizing anything was wrong. The older man tried again. The same wheel resisted. Ethan looked toward the bus stop, then back at the chair. "Sir, are you okay?" The man turned. He was in his early 70s, wearing a brown jacket and a faded cap with a small veteran emblem. Depends on your definition of okay. Ethan walked closer but stopped a respectful distance away. "Your front wheel is tracking sideways." The man looked down. That would explain why this thing suddenly thinks left is the only direction worth going. Ethan smiled. "Can I take a look? You know anything about these?" "Not much about the electronics. Wheels and bearings are more familiar." The man studied Ethan's Brooks cycle and repair shirt. "Bike shop." "My uncle's." Ethan pointed toward the caster without touching it. "I think the bracket shifted. If that is all it is, I might be able to straighten it." The man. "Check the time." "Son, you carrying tools around after work?" Ethan opened his backpack enough to show the compact kit. "My uncle says a tool is only useful if you have it when something breaks." "Your uncle sounds annoying." "He is." The man laughed. "I am Walter." "Ethan." Walter glanced toward the approaching traffic. "Ethan, you are going to miss your bus." Ethan looked down the street. His bus was already approaching the stop farther ahead. He could still make it if he ran. Then Walter tried moving the wheelchair again, and the caster twisted sideways. Ethan watched the bus doors open in the distance. There will be another bus. Walter's smile faded into something more thoughtful. "You sure?" "Yeah." Ethan crouched beside the wheelchair, careful to keep clear of Walter's feet. "Could you turn the power off for me while I check it?" Walter did. Ethan examined the caster assembly without forcing anything. One mounting point had shifted enough to throw the wheel out of alignment, but nothing appeared broken. He removed 2 small tools from his kit. "Good news." "I like good news. I think it just needs to be realigned and tightened." "And the bad news?" Ethan glanced up. "You have to listen to a 16-year-old explain wheel alignment." Walter laughed again. Ethan loosened the fitting slightly, centered the caster, checked its movement, and tightened it securely. He spun the wheel by hand. Smooth. Straight. He checked it once more before moving back. "Try it slowly." Walter switched the chair on and eased forward. The wheelchair traveled straight across the sidewalk. He stopped, reversed a few feet, then turned back toward Ethan with genuine surprise. "Well, I will be." Ethan began putting his tools away. "Looks better." Walter reached toward his jacket pocket. "How much do I owe you?" Ethan zipped the repair kit closed. "Nothing." Walter stared at him. "Nothing." Ethan nodded toward the road where his bus had already disappeared. "I told you. There will be another bus." Walter kept his hand near his jacket pocket. "Nothing is not a price." Ethan slipped the last wrench into his repair kit. "It is today." Walter looked at the wheelchair, then at Ethan. "You missed a bus and fixed something you do not even work on. Let me give you $20. "You do not have to." "I know I do not have to. I want to." Ethan shook his head and zipped the kit closed. "Keep it." Walter narrowed his eyes with playful suspicion. "You always this stubborn?" "My uncle says I am." "Your uncle sounds smarter every minute." Ethan laughed and stood. Walter switched the power back on and tested the chair again, rolling forward several feet before turning smoothly toward Ethan. "That is better than it has felt all week. You should still have a wheelchair technician inspect it when you can. I only realigned what shifted." "There you go, ruining your chance to pretend you are a genius." "I am 16. Nobody believes 16-year-olds are geniuses." Walter smiled. "You would be surprised what people believe when they actually pay attention." Ethan adjusted his backpack and checked the bus schedule on his phone. The next bus would arrive in 19 minutes. Walter noticed. "Now I feel worse." "Do not. I have time." "You got somewhere to be?" "Home eventually." "School." "High school." Walter pointed toward the Brooks Cycle and Repair logo embroidered over Ethan's chest. "And you work at your uncle's place after class?" "A few afternoons and Saturdays." "Planning to take over someday?" Ethan looked toward the traffic. "Maybe. I want to study mechanical engineering first." "College?" That is the plan. Expensive plan. Ethan smiled faintly. That is why I work. Walter nodded as though he understood more than Ethan had said. I spent years around machines. Different kind, mostly. You learn something after enough time. What? Most problems get worse when everybody stands around explaining why they are somebody else's responsibility. Ethan glanced at the wheelchair. That sounds like something my uncle would say. Then maybe I should meet him and charge him for my wisdom. Ethan laughed. A city bus appeared several blocks away, but Walter's stop was farther down the sidewalk. Ethan looked at the uneven pavement between them. Is that your stop near the pharmacy? It is. I will walk with you. Walter raised an eyebrow. You already fixed the chair. I know. And refused money. Also true. Now you are escorting me to the bus? Ethan started walking beside him. I want to make sure the wheel stays straight. Walter rolled alongside him. That is your excuse. It is a good excuse. They moved slowly past storefronts, a coffee shop, a small home goods store, and a row of parked cars. Walter told Ethan he had served in the army years earlier and had lived in Richmond for most of his adult life. Ethan did not ask about his disability, and Walter seemed to appreciate that. Instead, they argued briefly about whether old bicycles were better than new ones. Old things were built to last, Walter insisted. Old things were built heavy, Ethan replied. That is not the same thing. Listen to this kid. Ethan grinned. They were nearly halfway to the bus stop when Ethan noticed a man standing inside the home goods store watching them through the front window. The man was white, somewhere in his late 40s, wearing a button-down shirt with a store badge clipped near his chest. His eyes moved from Ethan's backpack to the repair kit in Ethan's hand, then to Walter's expensive power wheelchair. Ethan looked away. He had no reason to think much of it. Inside the store, an employee named Claire noticed her manager, Gregory Hale, still staring through the glass. Something wrong? She asked. Gregory pointed toward the sidewalk. That kid has tools next to that wheelchair. Claire looked outside. She saw Ethan walking beside Walter, talking with him. Maybe he fixed something. Gregory's expression remained suspicious. On a chair that expensive? Claire glanced at him. Did you ask them? Gregory did not answer. Outside, Walter was telling Ethan about a bus route change when Gregory reached for the store phone. Gregory watched Ethan and Walter move farther along the sidewalk, then lifted the store phone. Claire remained beside the window. What are you doing? She asked. Calling this in. Gregory kept his eyes on Ethan. Calling what in? A suspicious situation. Claire looked outside again. Ethan was walking beside the wheelchair, carrying his closed repair kit, while Walter spoke to him. Gregory. They are talking. That does not tell us what happened before. Neither does standing behind this window. Gregory hesitated, but only for a moment. I saw him crouched beside that chair with tools. Did you see him take anything? I could not see everything from here. Claire folded her arms. Then maybe ask them before deciding what you saw. Gregory turned away and made the call anyway. Outside, Ethan knew nothing about the conversation. Walter had reached the bus shelter and was testing the wheelchair one more time. He rolled forward, reversed, then turned in a smooth circle. Still straight, Ethan said. You sound disappointed. I was hoping I would get to charge you the second time. Walter laughed. Now we are negotiating. Ethan checked the electronic bus sign. 11 minutes. Your bus should be here soon. Walter looked at him. And yours? Mine comes after that. You sure? Yes, sir. Walter pointed toward him. Do not start calling me sir. Makes me feel 90. You are the one giving speeches about old machines. 71 is not old. I did not say it was. Your face did. Ethan smiled. For several minutes, the moment felt ordinary again. Traffic passed. A delivery truck stopped near the pharmacy. Wind pushed a paper cup along the curb. Then Ethan noticed a Richmond police vehicle turn into the commercial plaza. It slowed near the bus shelter. Ethan's smile faded. The vehicle stopped, and an officer stepped out. She appeared calm, scanning the area before approaching. Good afternoon, she said. I need to ask about a report involving this wheelchair. Walter frowned. What report? Ethan looked from the officer to Walter. I do not know. The officer introduced herself as Officer Maya Reynolds. Someone reported seeing a person with tools possibly removing parts from a power wheelchair. Walter stared at her. Removing parts? Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Without being told, he kept his hands visible in front of him. His repair kit remained closed at his side. I was fixing it, he said. Walter immediately added. He was helping me. Officer Reynolds looked at Walter. This is your chair? It certainly is. And you asked him to work on it. I did after he offered to look at the wheel. The caster was pulling sideways. Ethan pointed with an open hand toward the front wheel. The mounting point had shifted. I realigned it and tightened it. I did not remove any parts. Reynolds nodded. All right. I appreciate you explaining. Before she could continue, the door of the home goods store opened. Gregory walked toward them. Claire remained near the entrance, several yards behind him. I made the call, Gregory said. Walter looked at him. Why? Gregory gestured toward Ethan's toolkit. I saw him working around an expensive wheelchair with tools. It did not look right. Ethan stared at him. You saw me fixing it. I saw you handling it. Walter's voice sharpened. It belongs to me. I was sitting in it. Gregory looked uncomfortable, but continued. I could not know whether you understood what he was doing. Walter blinked. You could have asked me. Claire lowered her eyes from the doorway. Officer Reynolds turned toward Gregory. Did you personally see him remove property from the chair? Gregory paused. Not exactly. Did you see him conceal anything? No. Ethan looked across the street and noticed a small camera mounted above the corner of the commercial building. He remembered Marcus always telling him that arguments became shorter when facts were available. Ethan lifted his chin toward it. There is a camera right there. Everyone looked up. Ethan's voice remained steady. If anybody thinks I took something, then we do not have to argue about it. Gregory followed his gaze toward the camera. Ethan tightened his fingers around the handle of his closed repair kit, then relaxed them. Check the footage. Officer Reynolds followed Ethan's gaze toward the camera above the commercial building. That footage may help if there is still a dispute, she said. Walter gave a short, frustrated breath. There should not be a dispute. I was sitting right here while he fixed my chair. Gregory shifted his weight. I reported what looked suspicious from my store. Ethan finally looked directly at him. What part looked suspicious? Gregory glanced at the repair kit. You were using tools on expensive equipment. It is a wheelchair, Walter said. Not equipment sitting unattended. My wheelchair. With me in it. Claire had walked closer now, though she remained several feet behind Gregory. I told you they might have been fixing it, she said quietly. Gregory turned toward her. Claire, please. Officer Reynolds raised one hand slightly. Let us keep this simple. Mr. Bennett says Ethan had permission. Ethan says he repaired the caster. No one has reported missing property, and you did not see him conceal anything. Is that accurate? Gregory hesitated. Yes. Ethan heard the answer, but the tight feeling in his chest did not disappear. People passing the bus shelter had begun looking toward them. A man leaving the pharmacy slowed before continuing to his car. Ethan suddenly became aware of how young he must look standing there with his backpack and tools while adults discussed whether he had been stealing from a man he had stopped to help. Walter noticed Ethan's expression. You all right, kid? I am fine. You do not look fine. Ethan lowered his voice. I just want to go home. Reynolds nodded. I understand. She turned to Ethan. I do not have a reason to keep you here. Thank you for answering my questions. Walter looked at Gregory. That is it. Gregory seemed surprised. What do you mean? You called the police because a black teenager had tools beside my chair. You never walked 20 yards to ask me whether I knew him. Gregory's face tightened. Race had nothing to do with my concern. Walter studied him. Then tell me what did. The situation looked unusual. Ethan spoke before Walter could answer. Helping someone is unusual? Gregory looked at him. That is not what I said. You did not say anything to me. Ethan's voice remained level. You did not ask what I was doing. You called first. Silence settled between them. Claire looked toward the pavement. Officer Reynolds did not interrupt. Gregory finally said, I was trying to protect someone's property. Walter rested both hands on the arms of his wheelchair. Next time, start by talking to the person whose property you think you are protecting. Gregory opened his mouth, then stopped. Ethan looked toward the camera again. Can the footage be saved? He asked Reynolds. Possibly. The property manager may control that system. If you want it preserved, have your parent or guardian contact management as soon as possible. Ethan nodded. I will tell my uncle. A bus approached in the right lane, its brakes sighing as it pulled toward the stop. Walter looked at the route number. That is mine. Ethan stepped aside to give him room. We'll still straight. Walter rolled forward a few feet. Straight as an arrow. He looked back at Ethan. You missed your bus for me, and this is what you got for it. Ethan adjusted his backpack. The wheel works. That part still counts. Walter stared at him for a moment, then smiled sadly. What was the name of your uncle's shop again? Ethan pointed to the embroidered logo on his shirt. Brooks Cycle and Repair. Walter read it carefully. Brooks Cycle and Repair. The bus ramp lowered. Before Walter moved toward it, he held out his hand. Ethan shook it. Thank you, Ethan. You are welcome. Walter boarded, and the doors closed behind him. Ethan watched the bus pull away before turning toward the opposite stop. Gregory had already begun walking back toward his store. Claire remained near the entrance, looking uncomfortable. Ethan glanced once at the camera above the corner, then at the small repair kit in his hand. 10 minutes earlier, those tools had made him useful to a stranger. To someone watching through glass, they had made him suspicious. By the time Ethan returned to Brooks Cycle and Repair, the front windows had gone dark and Marcus was turning the sign on the door from open to closed. Marcus looked through the glass, unlocked the door again, and let him inside. You missed 2 buses. Ethan slipped off his backpack. I know. Marcus studied his face. What happened? It is a long story. I own a bicycle shop. Long stories are free after closing. Ethan almost smiled. He carried his repair kit to the workbench and began returning each tool to its usual place. Marcus did not push him. He locked the door, switched off the front display lights, and waited. Finally, Ethan said, I helped a man with a power wheelchair. That explains being late. It does not explain your face. Ethan placed a small wrench beside the others. His front caster was out of alignment. I fixed it. Good. Then somebody called the police. Marcus stopped moving. Why? Ethan stared at the tools. Because he saw me working on the chair and thought I might be taking parts. Did he ask you? No. Did he ask the owner of the wheelchair? No. Marcus pulled out a stool. Start from the beginning. Ethan told him about Walter, the missed bus, the repair, Gregory watching through the store window, Officer Reynolds arriving, and the camera above the corner. He repeated Gregory's explanation almost word for word. When he finished, Marcus remained quiet for several seconds. What did the officer do? Asked questions. Walter told her I had permission. She said there was no reason to keep me there. Marcus nodded. Good. Ethan picked up a shop rag and wiped a spot from the workbench that did not need wiping. I fixed that chair in about 10 minutes. Marcus watched him. Ethan folded the rag once. Explaining why I had my hands on it took longer. The refrigerator in the back room hummed softly. Outside, tires whispered over West Broad Street. Marcus leaned forward. Are you angry? Ethan considered the question. I do not know. That usually means yes. Maybe. Ethan looked toward him. I keep thinking about what Gregory said. That it looked unusual. What looked unusual to you? A broken wheel. Marcus nodded. And what did you do? Fixed it. Then start there. Ethan frowned. That does not make the rest disappear. No, it does not. Marcus stood and walked behind the counter, returning with a yellow notepad. He placed it in front of Ethan. Write down the time you left here, where you met Walter, when the officer arrived, the store name, the officer's name, and anything you remember Gregory saying. Ethan looked at the paper. Why? Because memory gets fuzzy. Paper does not. Officer Reynolds said we should ask them to save the camera footage. Then we will. Marcus checked the clock. The property office is probably closed now. I will call first thing tomorrow and send the request in writing. Ethan picked up a pen. Do you think they will keep it? I do not know. That is why we ask quickly. Ethan began writing. For 37. West Broad Street. Commercial Plaza. Walter Bennett. Officer Maya Reynolds. Gregory Hale. Marcus watched until Ethan reached the final line. One more thing, Marcus said. What? Write down what happened before the police came too. Ethan looked confused. The wheelchair. All of it. Why does that matter? Marcus rested a hand on the counter. Because if someone reviews what happened, they should see the whole truth, not only the moment somebody became suspicious. Ethan wrote again. Walter's caster pulled left. Ethan missed his bus. Walter offered money. Ethan refused. He walked Walter toward the stop. When he finished, the page looked strangely ordinary for something that had felt so heavy. Marcus read it once and placed it in a folder beneath the counter. Tomorrow we request the footage. Ethan nodded. And then what? Then we let facts do their job. Ethan closed his repair kit. He still felt embarrassed. He still wished Gregory had simply walked outside and asked one question. But the anger no longer felt shapeless. It had a time, a place, names, and a camera mounted above a corner. Across Richmond that same evening, Walter Bennett sat at his kitchen table, studying the Brooks Cycle and Repair logo he had written from memory on a scrap of paper. Then he picked up his phone and called his younger sister. Walter's call reached Rebecca Bennett while she was clearing the last papers from her dining table Friday evening. "You usually call me when you want something," she said. "Tonight, I want you to listen." Rebecca heard the difference in her brother's voice and sat down. Walter told her about the failed caster, the 16-year-old who missed his bus, the small repair kit, and the $20 Ethan refused to accept. Then his voice changed. "A store manager watched that boy help me and decided he must be stealing from my chair." Rebecca became still. "Did the police detain him?" "No. The officer listened to me and let him leave." "That is not the point." "What is the point?" "Nobody asked me." "What was happening before making the call?" Walter looked at the scrap of paper beside him. "The kid's name is Ethan Brooks. His shirt said Brooks Cycle and Repair." Rebecca wrote it down. "What do you want me to do?" "I do not want Judge Bennett." Walter's answer was immediate. "I want my sister who knows how people preserve evidence and file a complaint correctly." Rebecca understood. "Then first, do not contact the store manager yourself. Write down exactly what you remember. Tomorrow we find out who controls that camera." By Saturday morning, Marcus had already sent a written request to the commercial property office asking that footage from Friday afternoon be preserved. Walter submitted his own request describing the location and approximate time. Rebecca helped him identify the proper administrative channels, but she kept her judicial title out of every communication. Ethan spent Saturday at the bicycle shop repairing brakes and replacing worn chains. He asked Marcus twice whether anyone had answered. "Not yet," Marcus said both times. By Sunday afternoon, the property manager confirmed that the relevant video had been preserved for review. Ethan read the message over Marcus's shoulder. "So they have it. They have something from that time period. Can we see it?" "Not yet." Ethan exhaled. "Waiting is terrible." Marcus smiled. "Finally, something you cannot fix with a wrench." Monday morning arrived with sunlight across the shop floor and 3 bicycles waiting for service. Ethan was adjusting a derailleur when Marcus looked through the front window. A dark sedan had stopped near the curb. Rebecca stepped out first. That was the moment Ethan had already lived through. The stranger entering the shop, asking for him by name, and identifying herself as a judge. Now, standing beside the workbench after learning she was Walter's sister, Ethan still did not understand why she had come in person. "You could have called," he said. "I could have," Rebecca replied. Walter disagreed. The front bell rang again. Ethan turned. Walter rolled through the doorway in his power wheelchair, the repaired caster tracking perfectly straight. His face opened into a grin. "Found you." Ethan stared, then smiled despite himself. "You remembered the shirt?" Walter tapped one finger against his temple. "I spent 30 years remembering things people told me were unimportant." Marcus came around the counter and shook Walter's hand. "You must be the reason my nephew missed his bus. And your nephew is the reason I caught mine." Walter looked at Ethan. "Will is still good. I told you it would hold. You also told me to get it professionally checked." "Did you?" Walter looked offended. "Do not ruin the reunion." Rebecca almost smiled, then placed her leather folder on the counter. The mood shifted. "Ethan, I want to be clear about something before we discuss Friday." Ethan waited. "I did not come here to make a phone call from a judge's office and frighten someone into apologizing." Marcus nodded once. "Good. My brother told me what happened. Your uncle documented your account. The property manager preserved the footage. Those facts matter more than my job title." Ethan looked at Walter. "Then why come here?" Rebecca folded her hands over the folder. "Because people sometimes confuse justice with having a powerful person on their side. They are not the same thing." Ethan glanced at the row of tools behind him. "So what happens now?" Rebecca looked directly at him. "That depends partly on you." "On me?" "Yes." She paused. "Before anyone files anything, before anyone asks for an apology, before anyone decides what should happen to Gregory Hale, I want to know what you actually want." Ethan had expected explanations. He had expected Rebecca to tell him what the camera showed. He had not expected a question. Walter remained silent. Marcus did too. Ethan looked down at his hands, remembering the sidewalk, the police vehicle, Gregory watching from behind glass, and the strange feeling of having to explain why kindness had looked suspicious. When he finally raised his eyes, Rebecca was still waiting. "I want him to understand why he called before he asked." Rebecca held Ethan's gaze for a moment. "That is a reasonable place to start." Walter shifted slightly in his wheelchair. And I want somebody to explain why my word apparently mattered only after an officer arrived. Marcus leaned against the counter. We want the facts documented. Nothing more than what the facts support. Rebecca nodded. Then we agree. She opened her leather folder and removed several printed pages. The property manager confirmed the relevant camera footage was preserved. Your written request helped make that happen quickly. Ethan looked at Marcus. So writing everything down mattered. Usually does, Marcus said. Rebecca continued. There is also a formal complaint process through the Commercial Property Management Office. You can describe what happened, provide the time and location, identify witnesses, and request a review of the preserved video. Ethan glanced at her. Can you make them review it? No. Her answer came without hesitation. And I would not try. Walter smiled faintly, as though he had expected exactly that response. Rebecca rested one hand on the folder. My position does not give me the right to pressure a private business because my brother was involved. I am here to help you understand the process, not to replace it. Marcus studied the paperwork. So we file this ourselves. Yes. And your name stays out of it. My title stays out of it. Walter can provide his own witness statement because he was there. Ethan looked at Rebecca. Then what does having a judge in the room change? Rebecca considered him carefully. Nothing about what happened Friday. That is the point. The answer settled differently than Ethan expected. There would be no dramatic phone call, no command from someone important, no instant punishment. Just statements, timestamps, video, and the patience to let evidence speak. Walter broke the silence. Not as exciting as television, is it? Ethan smiled. Not really. Good. Television would have me giving a speech. You already give speeches. Watch yourself, mechanic. Later that morning, Marcus and Ethan completed the complaint together. Walter submitted his statement separately. Claire, after learning that management was reviewing the incident, agreed to describe what she had seen from inside the store, including the fact that she had suggested Gregory speak to Walter and Ethan before making the call. By Tuesday afternoon, the property manager reviewed the preserved footage with the appropriate representatives. The camera had no useful audio, but the images were clear. Ethan approached Walter only after noticing the wheelchair struggling to track straight. Walter remained present throughout the repair. Ethan opened his own backpack, used his own tools, adjusted the caster, then stepped away while Walter tested the chair. The footage showed Walter reaching toward his pocket and Ethan shaking his head. It showed them traveling together toward the bus stop. It also showed Gregory watching from inside his store. At no point did Ethan conceal anything or remove property. When Marcus received confirmation that the videos supported their account, Ethan read the message twice. That is it, he asked. That is what happened, Marcus replied. I know. It just looks so simple when somebody writes it down. Walter, speaking through Marcus's phone on speaker, said, Truth is often less complicated than suspicion. The formal review continued. Gregory was interviewed. Claire gave her account. Officer Reynolds's incident notes were checked. No one claimed Gregory had used an explicit racial insult, and Ethan never said he had. The concern was more uncomfortable than that. Why had Gregory interpreted a black teenager with tools as a possible thief before asking the wheelchair owner a single question? 2 days later, Gregory requested a meeting with Ethan and Marcus at the property office. Walter chose to attend as well. Rebecca did not. Before Ethan left the shop, he asked her why. Because this part belongs to you, she said. At the property office, Gregory was already seated when Ethan entered. He looked different without the storefront window between them. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Gregory stood. Ethan, I watched the video. Ethan remained still. Gregory swallowed. I was wrong. Ethan waited. Gregory looked toward Walter, then back at the 16-year-old he had never bothered to question. And I need to tell you what I was wrong about. Gregory remained standing across the conference table, his hands resting loosely. At his sides. I was wrong before I ever made the call, he said. Ethan watched him without answering. Gregory glanced toward Walter, then Marcus. I told myself I was protecting someone's property. But the video showed something I should have understood without needing a video. Mr. Bennett was right there. You were talking to him. You were helping him. I never asked either of you one question. Walter's expression stayed serious. No, you did not. Gregory nodded. Claire suggested that I ask. I chose not to. Ethan finally spoke. Why? Gregory looked down briefly. I made an assumption about what I thought I was seeing, and I treated that assumption like evidence. Because I had tools? Ethan asked. That was what I told myself. Gregory met his eyes again. But I have had to ask myself whether I would have made the same assumption about every teenager standing there with those tools. I cannot honestly say that I would have. The room became quiet. Ethan had imagined this conversation several times, but he had never imagined Gregory admitting something that directly. I cannot change what happened, Gregory continued. I can apologize for it. I am sorry, Ethan. You were helping someone, and I treated you like you needed to prove you were not doing something wrong. Ethan looked at Marcus. His uncle gave no signal about what he should say. That choice belonged to him. I accept your apology, Ethan said finally. But I do not want the next kid to need a camera before somebody asks a question. Gregory nodded slowly. Neither do I. The property management representative explained that the incident review had resulted in new training for employees and managers across the commercial plaza, focusing on recognizing bias, verifying facts before escalating situations, and communicating directly when circumstances allowed. The businesses were also given clearer guidance for reporting genuine safety concerns without turning assumptions into accusations. It was not a dramatic punishment. No powerful person had appeared and ordered everyone to obey. The change came from a complaint, witness statements, preserved video, and people willing to examine an uncomfortable decision. When Ethan returned to the bicycle shop, Rebecca was waiting beside the counter with Walter. How did it go? She asked. Ethan set his backpack down. He apologized. Did that fix everything? No, Rebecca smiled slightly. Good answer. Ethan looked at her. But they are changing the training. That matters. Walter pointed at his sister. Careful. She charges by the sentence. I do not, Rebecca said. You should. You talk enough. Ethan laughed, and for the first time since Friday, the sound came easily. 3 weeks later, Richmond had settled into a warmer stretch of weather. Late afternoon sunlight spilled through the windows of Brooks' Cycle and Repair while Ethan adjusted the brakes on a customer's bicycle. The bell above the door rang. Mechanic, a familiar voice called. Ethan looked up. Walter rolled inside. Please tell me you did not break that chair again. I did not break anything. Something is making a noise. Ethan crouched near the front caster and rotated it carefully. A faint click came once with every turn. Small adjustment, Ethan said. I can fix it. Walter reached for his wallet. Ethan looked up. Do not. You know I can pay you. I know. And Ethan loosened the fitting, centered the wheel, then tightened it with the same small wrench he had used weeks earlier. He spun the caster. The click was gone. Walter watched the wheel turn smoothly. And you are still not paying me. Walter shook his head, smiling. Stubborn kid. That is what my uncle says. Marcus called from the back room. Because it is true. Walter laughed. Ethan gave the caster one final spin and watched it rotate perfectly straight. Outside, buses moved along West Broad Street beneath the evening light. Inside the shop, the small wrench clicked once as Ethan returned it to the workbench. No judge stood beside him. No camera needed to prove anything. There was only an old man, a 16-year-old mechanic, and a wheel turning freely because someone had stopped long enough to help.